Hello, U.S. history students. So, in the third and final lesson for this week, what we're going to be looking at are economic differences between the North and the South. Now, so far this week, we've talked about westward expansion, movement out west. And as people move out west, one of the main concerns is going to be the spread of slavery, which is going to lead to a series of compromises in the 1820s and 1850s. Well, tied to that is going to be the economic differences between the North and the South. So we're going to look at those differences in this lesson. You've got a sheet of notes. There's a lot of space on those notes because I want you to be able to take your own notes. Okay, so don't be concerned that they're not filling the blank or anything like that. I want you to get the main points down. Now, that being said, I will tell you exactly what I want you to copy down here in just a few minutes. Okay, so sit back and relax, and we'll talk about the differences between the North and the South. Okay, we're going to start with the North first. Now, remember, the North is in the northern part of the country. Okay, so on your map, this is the North. Okay, now the North is known for an industrial economy. And when you think industry, think factories. We talked about that all the way back with the New England colonies. The New England people were very, very industrious. We said there were going to be factories coming, and now we're beginning to see them. And we're going to talk more about this when we get into industrialization after the Civil War. But the North has an industrial economy based on factories. And when you think factories, think manufacturing, think machines. And we're able to make things like guns and textiles and sewing machines and farm equipment. All of that stuff can be manufactured in the factories of the industrial North. The other thing that the North is known for, okay, are these, all right? And you can see right here in the North, you see more of them here than you do in the South, okay? And those are railroads. There are lots of railroads in the North. About 20,000 miles of track carry raw materials east and manufactured goods west, all right? And you can see in this map that there are a few railroads down here in the South, which is surprising because we're in Salem, we're close to Roanoke. Roanoke has a booming railroad economy, but it is still nothing like the railroads we see up in the North. All right, 20,000 miles of track. The other thing that the North is known for is its workforce. Its workforce is made up of immigrants. All right, think Ellis Island in New York, a lot of immigrants coming up into the northern part of the country. The South, and we're going to talk more about this when we get into the Civil War and things, the South is very quick to point out the North doesn't like slavery. In fact, the North is very much concerned about the expansion of slavery. But at this point in time, it's not for any altruistic reason, okay? It's not because they think that slavery is wrong. I mean, there are some people in the North that feel that way. But a very real concern for a lot of these immigrants is that if slavery expands, that's a free labor source, and that free labor source is going to put these immigrants out of work. And like I said, the Southerners are quick to point out, you guys criticize us because of slavery. Look at how you're treating the immigrants of the North. You're not treating them as equal citizens. They live in segregated parts of their neighborhood and ghettos in the neighborhood. They're discriminated against. All right. So do not come and get upset with us about slavery when you yourselves are not treating the immigrants real well either. Okay. Now, there is a completely different, slavery, you are totally controlled. All right. I realize there are differences between slavery and immigrants. But the South says, look, if you're going to criticize us, you need to look at yourself too in the way you're treating these immigrants. Okay. So this is what I want you to write down for the North. It's an industrial economy, lots of factories. It has lots of railroads. It has lots of immigrants from Europe to work in those factories, and it fears the expansion of slavery. And those immigrants are really the ones that fear the expansion of slavery because they don't want to lose their jobs. That would be a free workforce taking the place of a workforce that has to be paid. And by the way, they're not getting paid a bunch of money. And we're going to talk about that when we get to industrialization too, the discrimination in paychecks. Okay. So this is the North, industrial, lots of railroads, immigrants, and fears the expansion of slavery. Now let's look at the South. Okay. Here we are down here with the South. Let's talk about the South. Well, if the North has an industrial economy, The South's economy is going to be based on agriculture, especially plantation agriculture. We associate those big farms with all those slaves with the South. You're not going to find them up in the North. Okay, so it's a very agricultural economy based on plantations and small farming. If the North relies on if the North relies on railroads, well, before I get there, sorry, since it is an agricultural economy, it is dependent on slavery. Okay, and the new cash crop that is dependent on slavery is cotton. All right, and we talked about the cotton gin when we talked about westward expansion. Cotton gin is going to expand slavery throughout the South. Cotton gin makes cotton the new key cash crop. Okay? And like I said, it's dependent on slavery to work in those plantations and to work on those farms, especially the plantations that require a large workforce. You're going to need slaves to do that. Okay. Now, if the North has a lot of railroads, the South does not. The South needs to find a new form of transportation or another form of transportation. And that other form of transportation is going to be rivers. Okay. We use rivers, not so many railroads in the South as you see up in the North. So we're going to be dependent on river travel and water travel. Okay. Now, that's the South, all right? It's based on a plantation farming economy. The focus now is on cotton, all right? We're moving away from tobacco and other cash crops. The focus now is on cotton thanks to the cotton gin. The cotton gin is going to spread slavery throughout the South, and the Southern farms are going to become dependent on slavery for their workforce. And then we're going to use rivers, but not so many railroads. There are going to be railroads in the South, but not as many as the North. Okay, so that's the South. Plantation agricultural economy focuses on cotton, dependent on slavery, and we use rivers, not so many railroads. Now, there's one other issue that is dividing the North and the South, and this is a pretty big one, and we're going to use some illustrations to show this. Okay, we're going to use some graphics to show this. There's a problem with the country's economy as a whole. Europe, specifically Britain, is sending a bunch of cheap goods to the United States. Okay. For example, a sewing machine. Let's say a British sewing machine costs $5. Okay. There's our little British sewing machine. A comparable US sewing machine costs $10. Well, you guys can probably guess which one are people going to buy? Probably the $5 one. Okay, it's cheaper. Now, I know these graphics are kind of weird. You could say, well, the US machine looks better, it looks bigger, it's got more buttons and stuff like that. I understand that. Okay, and some for some consumers that is going to play a factor. Okay, I'd rather pay for the $10 machine and have it last than pay the $5 machine and have to replace it ever so often. Okay, so you're right. Okay, there are a lot of factors into this, but at face value, a lot of people are going to buy the $5 machine and not the $10 machine, which is going to hurt northern manufacturers. Okay, it's going to hurt U.S. businesses to begin with, but it's really going to hurt the North because remember, the North has an industrial economy. It's got a lot of factories. It's got a lot of manufacturing. Okay, so northern manufacturers are hurt by the fact that all these cheap goods are coming from Europe. All right, no one is buying their goods. They are seen as more expensive. So U.S. industry is taking a hit. Well, these northern manufacturers go to the government and they say, look, what can you do to help us here? What can you do to protect us? And we've talked about this in class already in some situations. One of the things you can do is you can raise taxes, okay, especially taxes on imported goods. So the U.S. government is going to impose tariffs on imported goods to get people to buy American and to protect U.S. goods. Now, like we talked about, we've got to be careful with this because we don't want to raise taxes so much that it hurts our trade. Okay, so while we are going to raise taxes, we're going to raise tariffs on imports, we are being very, very careful to not have a breakdown in trade as well. All right, so we're going to go back to our sewing machine. All right, we got the $5 British machine, but now there's an $8 tax, an $8 tariff added to it. which makes that British sewing machine $13. Okay? Versus that American sewing machine, which is not going to be taxed with the tariff, it's still $10. Okay? Now, which one are people going to buy? You're right, the $10 machine. Okay, now the $10 machine has become cheaper. All right, so we're not going to buy the British machine. We're going to buy the American machine. All right, the cost of the British goods goes up. The price of the U.S. goods stays the same. So people are going to purchase the U.S. goods. Now, at face value, this looks good. Okay, we want to protect U.S. industries and things like that. But who else has to buy those manufactured goods from the North? People in the South, because remember, people in the South, they don't have a manufacturing economy. And there are going to be people in the South that say, look, keep in mind, the South and the western part of the country are kind of poorer than the northern part. And there are going to be people in the South and the West that say, look, we couldn't afford the $10 machine to begin with. That's why we weren't buying it. We could afford the $5 machine. But now we can't afford either one because of this tariff. That $5 machine is now $13 thanks to that tariff. And that $10 machine, which we couldn't buy to begin with, is still $10. So now we can't buy either one. The South feels it is being forced to buy more expensive northern goods. Okay? And this is just going to add to the frustration that is beginning to develop between the two sections of the country. The South is feeling that is being forced to buy more expensive northern goods. In fact, Southerners will go so far as to say the North is trying to make money at the expense of the South because we couldn't buy the $5 machine. We couldn't buy the $10. We couldn't buy the $10 machine. We could buy the $5 machine. We couldn't buy the $10 machine. And now we can't buy the $10 machine or the $13 machine. But if we got to buy one, we'll buy the $10 machine. So the North seems to be making money at the expense of the South. All right. The bottom line with all that, and you can add this to your map. The North is going to support the tariff because it protects its manufacturing industrial economy. The South is going to oppose the tariff because it looks like the North is making money off the South, and they feel they are being forced to buy more expensive northern goods that they couldn't buy to begin with, that they couldn't afford to begin with. So the North is going to support the tariff. The South is going to oppose the tariff. And like I said just a second ago, that's going to add to these feelings, this tension between the North and the South that is eventually going to push us towards civil war. Now, you're going to have a little quiz on this material, okay? Next week, we're going to pick up on this. We're going to talk about abolitionists next week, all right? And this growing tension that is going to divide the nation. And when we get back from Christmas, we are going to be talking about the Civil War and Reconstruction.